Joining me now is Chip Chapman, former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence, to discuss this ongoing situation. Chip, thank you so much for joining us here on TalkTV. Can you tell us if there's been any developments in this appalling story that we are seeing happening in Prague?
Well, I think we can rule out terrorism. It will probably go into the fact that he either had some mental illness or a grievance. And I think the indication of that is the first thing is he shot his father. And if you look at the cases in the UK, when we've had non-terrorists but very significant killings, mothers or fathers have been in a number of those. So, for example, the Hungerford attack in 1987 killed his father, and the Jake Davidson one in 2021 killed his mother. So killing the father is an indication, obviously, of some sort of mental disturbance which went on then to show in a grievance. But it's very rare in Europe to have these mass shootings. Access to weaponry and ammunition is very difficult to get in the UK, not so much in the Czech Republic because of the sort of hunting culture there. So you'll almost guarantee there'll be some sort of grievance, some sort of mental illness, and killing your father is, of course, very aberrant.
And of course, the Czech Republic today is entering a national day of mourning, but it is one of the only countries in Europe, in fact, I believe the only country in Europe, where they have a constitutional right to bear arms. And in fact, there is enough weapons in the Czech Republic for 1 in 10 people to own a gun. We see this in America as well. Is there a direct link between the number of firearms and guns in society and these sorts of mass shootings?
Well, there are cultural resonances which differ again. So because you mentioned America, mass shootings in America are defined as 4 or more people who were killed or injured. And already in 2023, for example, there have been 632 mass shootings in America where over 3,000 people have been killed or injured. Now, the right to bear arms, of course, is enshrined in the American Constitution, and the culture of people in America to take those out with them is very different than, for example, the Czech Republic, where the weapons are secured until you go hunting. But it is the fact that having access to firearms in the UK is really restricted, which does restrict the number of attacks in the UK, either in serious organised crime or in the terrorist milieu. And again, the last sort of major significant attack which changed the firearms legislation here was, of course, the Dunblane attack in 1996, where we caveated the use of short-barreled weapons, essentially handguns, and it's that which has led to no mass shootings from handguns since the Dunblane incident in 96.
And we understand from the reports that this individual in the Czech Republic may have been radicalised by following a similar mass school shooting by a schoolgirl in Russia. Do you think we should become increasingly concerned not just about mass shootings, but in terms of the terrorism threat here in the UK by the use of the internet by people who want to become radicalised in this way?
Well, I think it's the first thing which is more relevant, because although most of the cases that Counter-Terrorist Command and MI5 look at are either jihadist or right-wing extremists, there's a new category which is showing far more resonance, and that's what they call mixed, unstable, or unclear ideology. And that encompasses people, often teenagers, of which the most teenagers ever were arrested in the last year. And it's those who can have mental health issues and they're intent on violence with no clearly discernible motivation. And some of those are those who are obsessed with shootings and mass murder. So, for example, one of the cases where someone was prosecuted and put in prison was a chap called Shane Fletcher in April 19, who had a hatred for the people of Workington and a desire for revenge. He thought he had an issue with those. We're also seeing this in other ways of conspiracy theories. The first person was put in prison for conspiracy theories recently. And we also are seeing a sort of millage of things post-COVID, where we have a thing called salad bar ideologies, where people who are on the net can take the propaganda of various groups and therefore go into this mixed, unstable, or unclear category of motivation or any attack, which can be either terrorist or non-terrorist. And of course, in the UK, to be a terrorist attack, it's got to have either an ideological, political, racial, or religious aspect to it.
And on the ideological, political and racial motivations for terrorism attacks, should we be increasingly concerned the longer the conflict goes on between Hamas and Israel about potential threats and attacks on the streets here in the United Kingdom?
Well, there's three parts to that. Of course, we're seeing two of them played out already with hate crimes, both in terms of anti-Semitic stuff and in terms of anti-Islam aspects. You're seeing the second one with extremism in terms of either Hizb ut-Tahrir being on the streets or people being radicalized via that. The one which we would worry about is those two aspects going into terrorist attacks. Now, of course, terrorist attacks are fairly rare in the UK. The one thing which does worry me is that we've seen flare-ups in the past from conflicts in the Middle East between Israel and Palestinian groups. Those have not spilled over because the duration of those conflicts has been fairly short. So, for example, in 2021, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad Israeli conflict was 11 days. The two conflicts before that in 2014, 2008 were 18 and 19 days. Now we're in about day 77, 78, around there. So the longer duration of the conflict in Israel does worry me in terms of these flare-ups enduring and more people therefore being having a propensity to be radicalized in the future.
Thank you, Major General Chip Chapman, for joining us here.